It's Jim Check with Now Media. With me, Ian Burns, managing editor with their really big show. And we operate this news show with what, one millionth of the budget the CBC has, I guess, or one whatever, right? We don't get we get zero of their budget. Lots to talk about, and Carney's going to speak right away here on the dropping the tariffs with the United States. So we're going to cut away to that as soon as he starts talking. But we'll give you some of the headlines, though. Other than the Carney's to drop the counter-tariffs on the U.S., we all get the U.S. culture wars, but we don't get the protection and freedom of speech that they get. And that's an interview I did with a lawyer here. And Trump and trade, obviously back in the spotlight. Government-funded media working hard to slag Poilievre. And is it time to call our home a castle in Canada and the Canadian middle class slipping into poverty? And the Liberals love to censor. Liberals love to squeeze seniors, or look to squeeze seniors, and out-of-control immigration is a train wreck for the majority of Canadians, and the U.S. is the standard for freedom of speech. All that and a lot more, but like I said, we're going to cut away when Carney starts talking. He's called that press conference here where he's going to talk about, I mean, the mainstream media has already put it out there too. I mean, not mainstream, but Bloomberg, BNN, Bloomberg is talking about how he's going to put his elbows down.
Well, he hasn't turned up yet. It looks like he's going to be late, which he often is. Says so from the Prime Minister's office said 12 p.m. Ottawa time, and obviously it's 2 minutes past now, and he's still not there. So but I'll keep an eye on it when he appears.
We're expecting him to remove many of the retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, though. That's from a source, and the Canadian that includes U.S. auto, steel, aluminum. Canadian tariffs on U.S. auto, steel, and aluminum may remain, though. So anyway.
And this is like, when they say a source, just as an idea, anybody that doesn't know how this works, that will be right from the horse's mouth. That will be the Prime Minister's office. Those people that work there, the media people, will have sent emails to favoured members of the press to say, this is what's going to happen. They always tend to do this early on, like a couple of hours before at least.
And this comes from that phone call that Mark Carney and Donald Trump had yesterday. And Carney said that call was short, yet productive. So we'll see how productive it is.
Productive for someone, it sounds like. At the minute, it sounds like it was productive for Donald Trump. And then he can come out and say, look at what a fierce negotiator I am. Everybody's scared of us. Now it's only China that's got counter tariffs on us. Although if he is going to keep it on steel and aluminium and all the rest of it, then still going to be there. Still going to be some tariffs, but I guess they are reciprocal, to use Donald Trump's favorite word.
And here's this little clip here from BNN Bloomberg here, where they talk about, it's like 15 seconds. We'll just play that real quick.
I suppose the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, will initially face criticism for supposedly lowering his elbows and weakening in the face of Trump's threats.
I expect he will face that criticism.
I suppose the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, will initially face...
That's good. And just play the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, but will he, though? I mean, will he really face that criticism? I don't think so. I don't think he will. I mean, obviously, Pierre Poilievre's going to come out. He'll do a press conference.
He'll do the criticism,
and about 2 hours later, it'll barely be reported. It might get a little, like a tiny bit of reporting. But that's about it, really. Then the CBC will start running cover. I know they will. So will the CTV. They'll start saying, Poilievre says Carney put his elbows down, but did he really? And then they'll kind of go in. It's going to be a good laugh.
We got some sound issues there. We got a little clip here from CBC.
The two countries are still in this trade war, as you alluded to. There is no deal between the two of them. At one point, Carney and Trump were supposed to come to one in July. Then that became August. And now, government is looking at September and the return of the House of Commons with still no deal in place. All of this coming as we know there is a framework agreement between the UK and the US, and now this week the US announced one with the European Union. So Canada kind of starting to look like the odd man out here, though the Liberals have repeatedly said, you know, no deal is better than a bad deal, i.e. trying to get rid of as many tariffs as they can has become the goal. At one point, we kept hearing they will not accept a deal without tariffs. Then that messaging kind of changed, and now we wait to see what happens next. Surely, though, as September comes and the politicians return to the House of Commons, the Liberals must be aware that the lack of a deal will be used as a weapon against them by the Conservatives, who now have Pierre Poilievre back as their leader. He will definitely not stop making a point of that during question period.
Wow.
As if it's only Pierre Poilievre, Pierre Poilievre, as if it's only him in the whole country that cares. The whole country is upset about this.
This is
or
what
at
happens
least concerned.
when your star player is not doing as well as expected, when you're, you know, like literally cheerleading, and then you have to act all depressed when it looks like it's not going well. It's like they're losing game 7, and and they're just whining at this point here. Still nobody on the podium.
And it's a classic, isn't it? It's like, rather than deal with the sort of emergency or the problem, what you do instead is you point a finger at the person that's talking about it. So, you know, this guy he's really using it as a weapon. So what are you talking about? Or alternatively, the Prime Minister said he was going to get a deal by, what was it, mid-July? Failed. Then he said August 1st, failed. And now here we are, August 22nd, and he's going to come out and say, after all this talk about putting counter-tariffs on the Americans and like making them suffer until they come to the table and do the right deal with Canada, instead, now it's going to be, sorry, Mr. Trump, we're going to bring our tariffs off your goods. Let's be friends, please.
And also, no deals. Build Canada Stronger, and we sent that. The one that he hasn't answered to too is the $1 billion loan by the Canadian Infrastructure Bank to China, and the $4 billion worth of ferry building jobs that went to China as well. And, you know, a country that doesn't have an industrial carbon tax. But there's a piece out of the Globe and Mail. Food professors put this out here, and this is an opinion piece, I think. And it says that the first 100 days, you and I talked about it yesterday, not great for the Prime Minister. Not flattering.
I will, just to quickly go back, let's take a bet. You talk about the Chinese ferry scandal. Yes. Let's just quickly take a bet. Are you willing to put $1, a loonie, on a journalist asking him about that here? Because there'll be a press conference after. Because there's no way I'm risking $1. It's definitely not going to be asked. But as for this, I mean, let's try and be as absolutely fair as we possibly can. He got rid of the carbon tax, obviously. He was forced to do that, but he did. That's manifested beautifully in the inflation figures, hasn't it? It really has had a profound effect on inflation, which is a good thing. He's pushed through Bill C5. We don't even know if that's a good thing yet, do we? Because nothing's happening. But I mean, he did do that. And
watered it down, though. To be fair, he watered it down, right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Here he is. Our man.
Is he on?
Appeared. Yeah.
Do you want to let him do his typical stuff first?
Getting his pen out. Land acknowledgements, perhaps. Let's see if he's doing anything.
We're already on the list.
All right.
Can you cut away?
He's having a giggle. He's having a laugh. He loves a laugh.
You can cut away, Romo. If you can put it in the middle of the screen, actually, just keep us on, actually. Or, I don't know, you can put it up full.
Second, to reinforce the competitiveness of Canadian businesses. And thirdly, to build the strongest economy in the G7. Our negotiations with the United States have been taking place as the U.S. has been in the process of fundamentally transforming all of its trading relationships. This new U.S. trade policy has several motivations: to raise tariff revenues, to protect strategic industries, to encourage foreign investment in the United States, and to change trade and non-trade policy in U.S. partners. And to these ends, the United States has announced a series of trade actions. Those began near the start of this year with the so-called IEEPA tariffs against Canada and Mexico based on U.S. concerns about the border and fentanyl trafficking. Those were quickly followed by reciprocal tariffs on every U.S. trade partner and very high sectoral tariffs applied globally on strategic industries, including steel, aluminum, autos, and copper. The United States has also imposed substantial trade actions on the Canadian lumber industry. Now, in recent weeks, the United States has agreed a series of trade deals with a variety of countries. And these deals have several aspects in common. First, baseline tariffs that cover a broad range of goods and services that are substantially higher than those U.S. tariffs that existed before. In fact, the average U.S. tariff rate on the world has jumped from just over 2% at the end of last year to almost 16%, 8 times higher, 16% currently. Those trade deals with other countries also have limited or no relief from those sectoral tariffs in those strategic industries such as steel and autos. They include substantial commitments by the U.S. trade partners for investments in the United States and significant unilateral trade liberalization measures by U.S. trade partners. As a result of these developments, the breadth and the depth of the changes in U.S. trade policy have become more fully apparent. Specifically, under the new U.S. approach, countries must now buy access to the world's largest economy through a combination of tariffs, investments, unilateral trade liberalization, and policy changes in their home markets. Now, as in previous trade disputes, Canada has implemented a series of retaliatory tariffs. Their objectives have been to protect Canadian workers and businesses and to incentivize a negotiated settlement with the United States. Few other countries followed suit. In a positive and very important development earlier this month, just a few weeks ago, the United States reaffirmed a core commitment to our free trade agreement, CUSMA, by reinforcing that those Canadian exports to the United States that are compliant with that agreement, that are compliant with CUSMA, will not be subject to U.S. IEEPA tariffs. Now, there's a lot of acronyms in that paragraph, so let me try to summarize what that actually means. As a result of that decision by the United States, the actual U.S. tariff rate on Canadian goods is 5.6%. Compare that to the 16% global average. That remains the lowest amongst all of the United States trading partners. And more than 85% of Canada-U.S. trade is now tariff-free. So let's be absolutely clear. Canada currently has the best trade deal with the United States. And while it's different from what we had before, it is still better than that of any other country. So as we work to address outstanding trade issues with the United States, it's important, it's vital. We do everything we can to preserve this unique advantage for Canadian workers, Canadian businesses. And doing so will require both building on a soon-to-be revised CUSMA, our free trade agreement with the U.S. and Mexico, as well as developing a new form of trade and security partnership with the United States. In this context, and consistent with Canada's commitment to CUSMA, I'm announcing today that the Canadian government will now match the United States by removing all of Canada's tariffs on U.S. goods specifically covered under CUSMA. Soyons clairs. Le Canada a en ce moment le meilleur accord commercial avec
you can probably mute that for right now while he speaks.
Il est différent.
So basically what he's saying here, what he's doing now is he's celebrating the fact that Canada apparently has the best of the worst deals, the best of the bad deals. But let's think about this for a second. He now, Mark Carney, since he was Prime Minister, since he became Prime Minister, he's got a worse deal than Justin Trudeau had. Just remember that. Justin Trudeau had 25%. He's got 35%. So now he's celebrating having a worse deal than Justin Trudeau. He's Prime Minister because everybody apparently thought Justin Trudeau was crap and he would do a much better job. But I mean, it's a very hard sell. He's basically trying to sell a poo-poo sandwich to the Canadian people there, isn't he?
The biggest point I get out of that is nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. The CUSMA thing was there. The only thing that's changing right now is Canada's removing the tariffs, the counter-tariffs that they put on, and now they're claiming it as a victory. But nothing has changed from the American standpoint.
Yeah, the Americans aren't changing anything. Oh, he's saying that everything that's covered under CUSMA.
But that has been the case. That's been the case.
Yeah.
So they realize they don't have a path to victory. So now they're trying to sell the lack of a win, according to them, as a victory. Like it's wow.
It looks weak, doesn't it? I mean, if you and me, we're sat here looking at this and saying he's made to look weak here. Imagine what the White House is thinking. They'll be laughing. They'll be watching this. Donald Trump will have this on, I'm sure, and he'll be laughing at it.
I think that the biggest thing is, if you look at now the premier's reactions across Canada, Danielle Smith played this right the whole time. And then she played it very responsibly and said we have to work on a deal. Whereas Doug Ford, David Eby, and Mark Carney, and many of the Liberal cabinets, they sold this as this great attack. And all they did was vilify, got people to kind of like fight against, like a lot of stuff. And now they're going to tell you that, oh, no, it's all good. But nothing's changed.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing new here. We do have the lowest tariff rates, but that's just because of CUSMA, which has never changed. That's always been in place, hasn't it?
So there was nothing. He didn't get even a bone or even a scrap thrown to him by Trump. Not even a scrap, because you would think he would be begging. Because if he had a scrap, even a scrap to say like, we got Trump to cut the softwood tariff the softwood lumber tariffs. We got canola. We got something. We got nothing. So he had that call, and we're going to talk about Anita Anand in a bit here too. But he had a call, and it was a brief call. And then today he makes announcements, because I think what they did do, and this is just me speculating, is that, because I've heard the speculation from Lutnick and Bessett, is that they probably threatened CUSMA. Like, if you want CUSMA, because they're going to renegotiate CUSMA, and because they said that they could actually just scrap it. And I think that's what they got. Like, you either toe the line on CUSMA or there is no CUSMA.
Yeah. Or maybe there's some kind of carrot involved that we're not aware of. Like, there's some kind of, like, if you do this, we'll give you a good deal. Because they were saying that, weren't they? People like Lutnick were saying, get rid of these counter tariffs, accept that we're the sort of the big monkey in the jungle, and then we'll sit down and we'll do a deal with you on those terms. But stop trying to stand up to us and stop trying to think that you're an equal. And in that scenario, we'll figure it out. That seems to have been the language. And I think Besant said that in a more sort of polished way. But Lutnick is the most clear speaking, I think, the most candid of all of the officials. And that's basically what he said. And I'm inclined to think that's right. And actually, so the ambassador also said that, didn't he?
No, is he taking questions right now, or?
I'm not actually sure. It looks like he's still. But why don't we unmute and have a listen?
Yeah, let's see where he's at here.
In parallel, we are focused on building our strength here at home, building Canada strong. The Canadian government will soon select the first in a series of new nation-building projects that will connect and transform our economy. We will catalyze investment and create higher-paying careers through our new defense industrial strategy. We'll transform Canadian strategic sectors that are being
you know what I mean? This is the same speech over and over again. Like
he doesn't even have to look at his notes. Look, he knows it off by heart.
Yeah, it's the same speech. I mean, the announcement of the announcement. I mean, he's had 100 days since.
We are going to build Canada strong at some point in the future. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, I think one of the things is why is in Parliament saying, we got a little, I don't know if we can put up this little chart here that shows you how many times this is projected sitting days for 2025. That one there, it's that little gray bar there. So that's the amount of days sat so far. And the gray bar is the amount that is projected to sit. Not many in comparison.
And it looks like it's the worst performance since, when is that? 1993 or something like that. And then for the next worst performance, you have to go back to the 1930s.
Yeah.
Probably understandable. They had quite a lot on their plate back then, didn't they?
Yeah. So And we'll just kind of follow this. We won't, because I'm sure there's some questions. Maybe we'll get something near the end here, but we'll just get through what we're doing here. And here's a piece, another hit piece here on Pierre Poilievre after winning that seat. Half of Canadians would be ashamed to call Poilievre PM. This is from CTV News. They're really amping up their bias, as a Tory leader wins back seat in Parliament, and that's according to Angus Reid. And then Angus Reid has partnerships with CBC and so on. We have a kind of a clip here, and so that's their partners in there. I don't know if you put that up there, Rommel, the next slide.
The most fascinating thing about Angus Reid, he's taking questions now, by the way, but the most fascinating thing about Angus Reid is that it's generally considered among, you know, the talking classes, talking heads, it's generally considered to be like centre-right. Ludicrous idea. It's definitely not.
Maybe you want to cut back and see what questions he's taking here. We'll just kind of like jump back and forth. I know that might be annoying, but
he's looking very smugly at a reporter right now.
Merci pour votre question.
Of course, it's French.
On verra.
Yeah, let's cut back. We'll just keep going. But there's an Abacus poll supposedly coming out that's showing Poilievre about to take him over in popularity. So who knows? And then
this is a good. I mean, obviously, whoever this person is, massive partisan, pro-conservative, anti-liberal, whatever. But it's something that we have said. Poilievre's been off the ice, as they say in the hockey world, hasn't he? He's not been doing anything really. He's had other things to do and think about. Hasn't been in Parliament, which is suspended or whatever. They're on their holidays, so he hasn't really, he hasn't been around. What got Poilievre popular in the first place was when he repeatedly attacked Trudeau in Parliament. That was what, during question period. No coincidence that Carney said he's not going to do even a fraction of the sort of question periods that Trudeau did. But once Poilievre starts getting his face out there and starts making a noise and interacting with Carney, then that's when you want to look at the polls. That's when they might tell you something.
Yeah, and then this is from Brian Lilly here. He says, not always clear when CBC reporters are covering Liberal ministers and when, on the other hand, they're simply incompetent. And you and I say this all the time. Their bias is so prevalent that you'd have to question sometimes whether it's liberal bias or it's just incompetence. You can pick one
I do think that they have a sort of de facto ideological test in place to recruit staff anyway. I mean, that's my considered opinion. So I would say that they are probably almost all of them on board. But yeah, when you do things like that, when you hire based on that sort of thing and based on identity as well, which they do in a very big way, obviously you're in a much smaller pool of talent, aren't you? So the chances are quite high that you're going to get incapable people to work for you. And they certainly have a lot of them at CBC.
And then the Castle laws come into play. We talked about Castle here. Pierre Poilievre teases potentially endorsing Castle laws, and I think he'd get a lot of support from Canadians on this Castle laws, and says Canadians deserve the right to defend themselves. We're hearing so much about that case where the guy broke into the guy's house, and the guy that defended his property and himself was the one is being charged. And Daniel Smith had something to say about that as well. Now let's play a small clip here from Daniel Smith.
To a incident, I believe, in Lindsay, Ontario, where a man is now facing criminal charges for defending himself from a home intruder. What are your thoughts on that situation?
Well, if you don't want to get shot or beaten up, don't break into people's houses. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that's good there. So Daniel Smith says it plain and simple. And then I guess this happened last night. A woman in critical condition after being set on fire while sleeping in her apartment. And apparently...
Does that mean that she could have set the intruder on fire? Because then that would have been proportionate.
Yeah, so I mean, it's more and more people now will say that, there has to be some changes here in Canada.
Well, it's the same, this is one of the many, very negative inheritances that Canada has to deal with from the mother country, from England. They have a very, very stupid system in England, and it's very similar. And there's been a few high-profile cases where people have defended themselves and been prosecuted for it, and it's just craziness, isn't it? I mean, I struggle to think of anybody that's any sort of average person rather than somebody whose mind has been poisoned by foolish ideas. Can't think of an ordinary person that thinks it's unreasonable to defend yourself by whatever means you can if, you know, your home is invaded. Or if you're attacked even in the street, you know? I mean, it extends beyond just the home, doesn't it, this?
Well, you would think in your home, that is your castle, and you're defending your children. I can remember this case when I was living in Edmonton. It was got to be about 30 years ago now. There was two individuals broke into the house. The mom and dad were sleeping, and they heard the kids cry out. And so the mom got up to go check on the kids. She was stabbed to death. And then, I can't remember the case. I think they were both, anyway, I'd have to go back and think. Remember, she was killed for sure. And it was a couple of young offenders, I believe. And then, it brought into question. And I can't remember if that was the case. There was a case where then they were fleeing, and then the homeowner shot them as they were fleeing, and then that was considered unnecessary force. And I guess if they were fleeing already, but anyway.
But this is the thing, though, again, like as we discussed earlier, how on earth do you come in and judge that from like a very quiet, sober courtroom? How can you possibly judge what was going through someone's mind in that situation where the adrenaline is like squirting out of their eyeballs? We don't act in a considered sort of fashion then, do we? We don't like contemplate what's proportionate and what isn't when somebody's just threatened the lives of our family or something like that.
And here's one that's really concerning, and you and I talk about this all the time too. The Canadian economy is just basically, it's hollowing out the middle class here. Fewer feel secure, more slipping into higher extreme precarity. And it's not just the blip. This has been ongoing for a while. It just seems to be the erosion of the middle class, because that's who they attack. We've seen through COVID how the upper, if we look at a bell curve, the upper echelon has just gotten richer and richer and richer, and the poor got poorer. But the middle class has been like hollowed out, and they're just all slipping to the far left of that bell curve. And it just seems that's who the governments attack for taxes and for regulation and all that kind of stuff. Well, during COVID, again, small businesses were the ones that were punished, while big box stores made out like bandits.
Well, I mean, just look at not just COVID, look at the last 30 or 40 years. Look at wage compression. Look at the gains made from economic growth. They've almost all gone to the, being generous, top 5%, being more realistic, maybe top 1%. Top 0.5%, something like that. This has been studied for a long time, since Reagan and Milton Friedman and Thatcher and all the rest of it, Mulrooney. Since that revolution in economics occurred in the sort of late 70s, early 80s, this has been the story. It's been going on for ages now. But what I find interesting about this is they did one survey in March this year. That's when Carney became Prime Minister. And then they did this one has been done in July. And in that period, there's been an 8-point increase in people's, feeling that they're living in a precarious state. An 8-point increase, that's quite substantial. It's like 20% increase. And, that should be of enormous concern, obviously, especially when you look, because this is quite a comprehensive piece of work, actually. I would advise people to have a look at it. Advocates are usually quite good for this kind of thing. But they looked at it and they found that most people who were worried about, the financial precariousness and all the rest of it, voted for Mark Carney and the Liberals. They thought Carney was going to be the answer to their fears. And obviously now this later study shows that they feel even worse now.
The story after the next story is going to be their gift for that voting for him too. Just wait for that gift. It is... well, the Liberals also love censorship, and this one here... from Holly Donald Blacklock say, Cabinet claimed right to censor charities for making statements deemed false and misleading under threat of losing their tax status. So they definitely know how especially Chrystia Freeland, they know how to use the law, like we've seen with the Freedom Convoy, we've seen with many other things where they go after you financially And this is another threat if charities, registered charities are generally required to ensure that information they provide is accurate, evidence-based, and prohibited from disseminating information that is false and misleading, wrote Friedland. These requirements apply equally to registered charities that provide reproductive health services for Canadians. They're trying to pass a law. Access to information records show that the Finance Department circulated a blacklist compiled by the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada that alphabetically marked 313 anti-choice groups and 207 anti-choice charities. Those named included the Beginnings Pregnancy Support Program and a long list of other groups here. The censored file included numerous complaints from Canadians opposed to the amendment. This is not to be decided by politicians, said one. And far too often, women across Canada seeking birth control and abortion can face judgment. And records indicated the only research done by the tax analyst was asking the Library of Parliament for a copy of the periodical Contraception Journal dated November 2015 that contained a 75-page article, toll-free but not judgment-free, evaluating post-abortion support services. So they were looking to blacklist certain organizations for their speech and use the tax code to go after them.
Well, and Blacklock's here. I mean, I haven't done the research myself, but Blacklock's here saying no such law exists anywhere. So that Blacklock's is alleging that Freeland and her office, or Freeland specifically, have just fabricated this. And it's not even, which is ironic considering it's about false or misleading information. But they're alleging that Freeland is, misled there. Not for the first time, I wouldn't wager.
Not for the first time, and likely not for the last time. Look at this. We just talked about it earlier. Look at the Liberals in their, tough talk on Trump, and then today, look at what they got. And I don't know how. Let's see how the media paints it. The mainstream, the government-funded media, how they paint this how they're going to kind of like turn this into a victory for Mark Carney and the Liberals.
But in a sense, they're pushing against an open door, aren't they? Because Carney is still in his little honeymoon period, I think. And generally speaking, I said what I said about Poilievre. I think his popularity will increase in time, but as it stands, Carney is way more popular than Poilievre. I think on a personal level, and I think they'll probably carry it. They're going to keep on carrying these losses, as it were. But eventually, it's going to catch up with them, as I've been saying since the beginning of this year. It is going to catch up with them, and the bill will come due, and he's going to have to pay it.
This next story may be part of that. And the government should cut $13.9 billion in seniors benefits to help bring costs down, says a federally funded research group. And they lobbied Canada for the home. This is the same group that lobbied the cabinet for a home equity tax after receiving a $450,000 grant from CMHC. So if they go after seniors, and that's where he got most of his votes. He got it from the seniors. And if they're going to cut billions from seniors benefits here, Prime Minister Mark Carney mandate letter commits to bring down costs. The group wrote in its recommendations, responsible changes to better align retirement policies created decades ago where today's needs are more necessary. It's time to change old age security thresholds. It's appropriate to ask retirees with six-figure incomes to accept fewer taxpayer dollars. So that means they're going to claw back your CPP. And Generation Squeeze, in its submission to the Commons Finance Committee, proposed a $6.9 billion cut in age and pension income tax benefits and $7 billion reduction in the rate in which old age securities are clawed back. There you go. Old age security is unusual in the generosity it shows a financially secure family. So you paid into it forever. Now they're looking for a way to get it back from you. And, like that home equity one was another one that they floated, where they were going after your principal residence exemption. So this may anger some.
That's very controversial, isn't it? It's very much on the nose. But this is also, politically, this is suicide. I mean, as you just alluded to,
Especially when
not only did this demographic push the Liberals over the edge, but this is the all-important demographic, and its importance is not declining. It's increasing. Like the boomer generation, the retirees, the older people, they are the masters of Canadian democracy right now. So to try and defy them, which is what this would represent, is a very, very risky game. And I would bet $1 that the Liberals won't try this. No way.
And especially when you look across the border now, and in Donald Trump's administration, no tax on Social Security, and here they're trying to take more away from you. And in the U.S., it would be political suicide to go after seniors. It would be political suicide to go after seniors in the United States. That was their big thing always. And then there has been growth in the middle class. I think since Trump has been in power, I think it's about $1,000 already. They've seen that's the first time they've seen in a while actually growth in the middle class. And no tax on Social Security, and here this proposal. I know he's going to have to he's going to have to find money somewhere. And the people with the money in Canada, who has the money mostly, and they have home equity. This is seniors.
Yeah, well, they've had their whole lives to accrue capital, I suppose. So yeah, they have more.
It's surely not the youth. They can't afford a home.
Yeah, they can't afford a coffee. They can't afford anything. Can't afford a printer.
But you know who can afford stuff right here? And this is from Franco, from the, I think it's the Canadian Federation of Taxpayers. 146, close to 150,000 federal bureaucrats now have a salary over 100,000. That's pretty good. 39% of the federal bureaucracy is paid six figures, and the number of federal bureaucrats with six-figure salaries spiked 238% since 2015.
It's amazing, isn't it? You're just guaranteed pay increases as well, aren't you? So even if you just join and don't do anything, don't get promoted, don't perform well or anything like that, eventually you're going to get there, aren't you? Eventually you'll get over the top as long as you just stay in your seat long enough.
Yeah, and that's he's from taxpayer.com, right? The Canadian Taxpayers Federation. That's Franco.
What's crazy is they have this thing, don't they, in Ontario? I think they were the pioneers of it, called the Sunshine List, where they publish the details of every employee, every sort of provincial employee that earns over $100,000. And it's just become, like, people are increasingly now saying, like, we're just going to have to stop doing this because it's so ridiculous, because there are just so many people on this list. And yet, and what they often say is, 100 grand isn't very much nowadays. It's actually a pretty basic sort of salary. But the reality is, when you look at spending power of Canadians, it hasn't really changed all that much, has it, in recent years because of economic stagnation over the last decade or so. So it is still quite a considerable wedge. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it's going to start being marginalized as a metric.
Yeah. Here's another one from Hollywood owns. Parliament must permit free debate on immigration quotas without emotionally driven objectives, says an Ottawa think tank. Conservative Bloc MPs have sought significant reductions on curbs of the over 3 million temporary permit holders. Remember, whenever you said anything about immigration, they started the Liberals started screeching and telling you that you were racist. And that was it. Mark Miller, wasn't it, walking down the street when that reporter asked him a question on immigration? Was it Mark
I don't
Miller?
even think it was a reporter, was it? Wasn't it just a citizen, just a civilian?
And he called him a racist.
That was shameful behavior. But shameful behavior from a shameless man, I'm afraid. He's done that many times.
Yeah, so citizens must embrace freedom of speech even on divisive issues like immigration, demanding rigorously rational rules of engagement despite emotionally driven objectives or concerns about the effects of certain arguments on safety of minorities. And that was a report from the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. And Canada has been weakened to the point of serious decline on all sake of avoiding Canada disagreements. And that's the thing. You weren't even allowed to talk about it. They went after Poilievre when he made statements on it in the media. The government-funded media just went after him on racism and a whole bunch of things, and they just stay on it, right? And that's the thing. Government-funded media in Canada is the problem. They need to free the media. They need to repeal Bill C-18. We can't have one media be holding to one party because it's not government-funded media. It's Liberal-funded media because Poilievre said he would remove their funding. So obviously, he is seen as the enemy.
Indeed he is. But I would say it's not just about accusations of racism. And, if we're going to talk about emotionally driven objections, that's the quote there. If we're going to talk about that, it's not just racism. I think another emotionally driven perspective on immigration is this idea, and we're seeing it a lot now in relation to Gaza and the Palestinian crisis, is this idea that people just deserve to come to Canada, and it's just like a moral imperative. It's like these people are suffering 8,000 miles away or something like that. Therefore, let's move them to Vancouver. It's kind of, that is obviously emotionalism. That's just complete emotion brain. There's no logic attached to that whatsoever. And I think that probably needs to be scrutinized a bit more, doesn't it? And in my own very small way, I've tried to like raise that when it comes to Gaza, particularly Gaza, which has been basically a terrorist state for the last 20 years, run by absolute psychopaths, and the population has been mistreated and abused in a dreadful way, to the extent that we actually have to wonder, is it in our interests to automatically assume that people should just come here to Canada? Like, maybe they've been indoctrinated with like horrible racist ideas that they might act upon. You just don't know. And how could you ever vet somebody in that context from a place like Gaza, which obviously has no real, records that you can trust? But that's being rational. That's a rational approach to immigration, isn't it? Whereas the emotional approach is, look at these suffering people in Gaza that did nothing wrong. They must be moved to British Columbia forthwith.
And here's another one that's this is on healthcare now, and this is about immigration as well. The Oakville family sues after their son, who waited 8 hours in the hospital to see a doctor, died. And this is across Canada. This is, again, immigration has taxed our healthcare system and to extreme levels. And this is Robin Urbach from the Globe and Mail, and she says Canada's existential crisis is healthcare. And Pierre Poilievre has said it many times too, is like, we have overtaxed our healthcare system because we don't have enough people. I think even Doug Ford said yesterday, we need to slow down immigration until we can match the needs. We need to stop it until we can match the needs. And but it's like, it was like no shit Sherlock a while ago. Like you know, I mean, when Trudeau was telling you that you were racist for saying anything, when the numbers were crazy. And it's the few that benefit from the out of control immigration, the colleges that were taking advantage of it with all these kind of like, what'd you say, not cooking courses, but what were they, some of the courses that they were running?
Catering PhD.
Catering and different things. And so they had these, and then now they're having to lay off because they can't tap that. And then obviously a lot of people relied on it for cheap labor and stuff like that. But
that's what it did. It diluted it weakened labor. This in a sort of abstract noun sense, it weakened the ability of labor to bargain for high salaries. That's what it's done, isn't it? And that's great news for the few, as you say.
Yeah, so the few that lobbied governed for out of control immigration that benefited from cheap labor at the expense of the majority of the population, and the 95% that paid through with worse health care, high escalating rents, higher inflation. And that's what the Canadian population did. They paid for that, while the few benefited from cheap labor.
Yeah, and it's an example of decaying institutions, isn't it? Yeah. And I'm on like a binge right now of reading a lot of books about what exactly it is that makes a society sort of downgrade itself and suffer. And Peter Turchin, can't recommend him strongly enough. He talks about this and how dangerous it is when you marginalize the majority so that the few can, be enriched. How colossally dangerous that is. But I'm also reading another book which is called Why Nations Fail. A lot of people probably heard of that one. But that's all about how institutions can become corrupted and destroy, healthy countries, basically. And these are the warning signs. We're seeing that institutions and the universities, what a good example that is, how they've become corrupted and they've downgraded, or, they've become a lot more kind of for the benefits of just one group. And that's at all of our expense. We all suffer because of it. And eventually, if we keep on this bad run long enough, God knows what could happen.
It's the lobbyists and the few. And then somebody on our comments here said the WEF is the few spelled backwards or whatever. And I've been saying this forever on my LinkedIn. If anybody wants to go on my LinkedIn, you'll see that. And I said that at the expense of the many, there's the benefit for the few, and that's elitism. And the elites have definitely really taken advantage of cheap labor, where the majority of Canadians paid for that. And there's not just in hard costs, but in soft costs of that, access to healthcare, homelessness, right? And then the opioid crisis, all these things. Like if you look at some of the things, like we're paying for hotel rooms because they don't do permits. They don't even do these things right. So we have our hotels filled with immigrants, and they're taking in $82,000 a year. The average Canadian takes less than $60,000 $100,000 a year. And again, there's been world organizations that Canada has said that Canada is really pursuing a strategy of modern day slavery.
Yeah, and then a lot of people, or what I used to think anyway, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm right here. I used to think, no, there's no way an elite or a group within the elite in a society would sabotage their own country like that. Like they wouldn't do that, obviously, because if the country is rich and getting richer, then so that'll also be true for them. But again, to name drop that why nations fail, it's sort of in that book they use loads of examples, but they look at times when the elite benefits disproportionately from a system that actually in the long run impoverishes the society. And they look at examples like slavery, which trashed certain economies like in Africa and so on, but it enriched a tiny minority. And that explains why that minority that is in charge of a country, that explains why they would do something that seems so counterproductive. It's because it's not actually counterproductive for them, because it makes their lives a lot better. It makes them much, much richer, even though the country as a whole suffers. So I think, humans obviously can do this kind of thing, can't they? They can take self-interest to a ridiculous extent and bring everyone else down in the process. We just have to, I guess, be on guard for that. And certainly if that's happening here in Canada, we should get rid of it immediately.
Yeah, Ian points out here, not the Ian that watches us here, that he points out that even small business owners take advantage. Yeah, of course, like the crumbs fall off the big fish sometimes, and so like some of the sucker fish then take advantage of it. But they play the role of useful idiots, because they're the ones that scream for more cheap labor, and then the elitists get them to be their shills for it, and and it works out well. So in that role, they're playing useful idiots for this runaway immigration policies. But again, the majority of the population pays the price. And we're seeing that with this in our healthcare system is where it really stands out.
But what Keista said there as well, that's what I was going to say. It gets to the point where if the big boys are doing it, if everyone else is doing it, then you've got to do it. What are you going to do? You're just going to like drown for your principles? Like you're obviously going to have to join the party. And this is what happens in lots of corrupt countries as well, where like everybody's corrupt. So it's like, well, what are you going to do? You're not going to bribe the civil servant to get the contract or something like that? Are you just going to fail and die? Like you kind of have to join in at a certain point.
I'm going to tell you right now, if you're watching this instead of mainstream media, you're getting a lot more, because we covered off a lot of this stuff that nobody will talk about, including what we talked about yesterday, that one contractor, and a lot of the stuff from Holly on the black lots, that how many contracts was it, and how many millions of dollars? You have to go back and watch yesterday's show, that they got being pretendians or whatever it is. But again, in the interest of moving on, we better go quick here. This is Marco Rubio, and this is regarding that truck thing we talked about the other day, where that trucker there did that illegal U-turn on a turnpike there in Florida and killed 3 people. Basically decapitated them. And Rubio's reaction to that is, effective immediately, we're pausing all issuance of worker visas for commercial truck drivers. The increasing number of foreign drivers operating large tractor-trailer trucks on U.S. roads, endangering American lives and undercutting the livelihood of American truckers. Again, goes back to that point. So they're taking less money. So it's modern-day slavery. So there's these large trucking outfits taking advantage of it, and some of them that are just spawned up. And we showed that yesterday, where in Canada, in Ontario it was, where they were issuing licenses basically for half price and for cash, basically. You don't even have to take all the lessons there, right?
It's not, I mean, you don't necessarily have, there is a kind of comparison, I guess, to slavery in a way that it is an attempt by the elite to exploit the lower orders. But I mean, the language that I would use, which is quite funny, because this is occurring under the Liberal Party, and this is Rubio talking about something that was, he's basically trying to attack the Democrats, isn't he? What's interesting is Karl Marx wrote about this at some length. He talked about how people that owned companies in England would bring in labor from Ireland intentionally. Like they would really rely on immigration from Ireland to try and bring wages down, and how that's an obviously exploitative thing to do. I mean, there's a vast amount of literature here on the left, like on the real left, like people like Karl Marx. It's just peculiar that that's all out of fashion. Nobody ever talks about that now. The modern left, I wonder what do they even know that Marx did that? I get the feeling that they don't, because you know, the likes of the Democrats. That's kind of why they hate Bernie Sanders, if anybody was wondering.
And in BC, we've had a lot of trucking accidents and that stuff here. And here's a truck being pulled over in BC here, and you can see the brake drum. If you could zoom in there, the brake drum is hanging down. So that's why the cops pulled him over, obviously. And then they've got a breathalyzer out there as well. So I'm not sure what happened. I mean, I'm just showing you this. And then this other little clip here. This is Uber. So a CEO in the United States is now suing because he was attacked for this Uber driver, and it was an illegal Uber driver from Russia who drives for Uber. And let's just watch this little clip here. Did we see the whole thing there? Right there, yeah. There you go. Yes, you don't insult an Uber driver from Russia.
Poilievre Vadim Nikolaevich. Sounds like somebody from the Caucasus.
And then here again, we're back to the immigration thing. Now, not the feds, Canadians. Because Olivia Chow, because they remember that we did that story just a while back saying that the Carney Liberals were going to stop paying for hotel rooms in September. And Chow says Toronto will face a $170 million shortfall if the feds don't pay for the hotel rooms.
Uh-oh, gonna have to put property tax up another 70%, which she did, didn't she? Not quite 70%.
Who's going to pay for the dance classes for Mayor Chow?
I mean, this is definitely legit, though. I mean, Chow is obviously a bit mad in a lot of ways, but she's very right here, I think, to raise this. It's like, who is going to pay for this? It's not fair for the federal government just to try and pass this stuff on to, you know, Toronto homeowners. That's pretty callous, isn't it? A bit foolish.
Well, maybe just stop paying altogether. There's that.
Increasingly, I think you're going to start seeing that happen. We might well live to see a taxpayer strike in Canada.
We're going to move on to, this is a national story, but it's also a local story because Sean Foyt was due to play here on Saturday, actually, August 23rd. And it's been canceled by the city of West Kelowna. They came out and they said that it was unsafe. And then Sean Foyt retweeted our story, actually. And he said, public safety concerns, in quotation, strikes again. And he says, will not be deterred. Typically what happens in those cases is they go to a private venue. And a lot of the stuff that they've tried to cancel, like the cities, Abbotsford and so on, they end up on a private venue. Have you heard where he's going to be playing yet tomorrow?
The last word was, I mean, he's a real prolific tweeter, so he might have tweeted in the time that we've been talking. But the last update from him was that he has like a few locations offered, and he's going to make a decision.
But he's inviting.
Oh, hold on, literally, here we go. 8 minutes ago, we have a location for Kelowna, and it's 11700 Greystokes Road. Oh yeah, there you go. Rummel's got it.
So that's up by Big White, isn't it? Greystokes Road.
Yeah, let's have a look. I mean, that's a very big number, that, isn't it? For the.
I'm pretty sure that's what that is. If you can find that.
So Joe Ridge, by the looks of it, that's where it is.
Yeah, Joe Ridge area, yeah. That's where I used to go snowmobiling up there.
It's right near the
bridge there, Mission Creek. Yeah,
by
Mission
the looks
Creek.
of it.
Yeah. Just before the creek that you go up that road there, I think.
So it's just off Highway 33. It's not that much of a schlep. That would be about half an hour probably from downtown.
No, it's not even that. It's probably like 15 minutes to the turn. I don't know how far up Greystokes Road it is.
It's really not. It's just off 33. You could more accurately say Highway 33, I think, because it's just there.
There you go. And he's invited all the media, so we're going to have to see if we're going to attend here, because we've asked for an interview several times. But I did interview Wilbur Turner yesterday. And he was one of the advocates, and he's part of what's that group that he's part of? He's the president of the Advocacy
Canada.
Yeah, so I interviewed him yesterday. It's a good interview to go watch. And he says that they will not protest if it's on private land. They only were protesting if it was on public land. And so he said that there will be no protest on private land, that he believes that people can do what they want on private land. So good interview, actually. Ian set that up.
No, it's good. I mean, and I will say, he is quite sort of clear speaking, isn't he, Wilbur Turner? Because he's not exactly, it's not like he's a politician where he just has to lie all the time. He does speak his mind. So that's the kind of voice you want in on one side of a story, for sure. So credit to old Wilbs there.
Yeah, no, so we interviewed him, and then we're more than willing to. We've asked several times for Sean Foyt. We've interviewed the lawyer, John Carpe, though, too, and about Sean Foyt. And then here's some, Macklin McCall put this out, decision by West Kelowna to cancel Sean Foyt's concert this Saturday sets a dangerous precedent where informed principle-based decision-making is surrendered to mob rule. And I put that tweet to Wilbur Turner as well. And there's another one here from Dan Ashton, a former politician here, that the community, with its own RCMP detachment, world-class firefighters, successfully fought some of the incredibly nasty wildfires, and they say they can't handle the safety there, so he was calling them out as well. And then there's this other tweet here from the Justice Center, and I've talked to John Carpe and many of the lawyers now for some of the constitutional freedoms here in Canada. And
that's not the only group either, is it? It's not just Carpe. There are other ones that are saying that it probably violates charter rights.
And I interviewed the lady, and we're going to talk about it here in a second, because we were talking about Amy Ham, and she's got that, and it was the $93,000 in costs that she was charged with there after her court case. And it's a good interview. I interviewed Lisa Bildy there, and then she's from the Freedom of Speech Union of Canada. And anyway, it's a really good interview as well. I think that story will go up today as well. And then she talked about how they're appealing that in a court. And in her case, it wasn't a fine so much as that they went to court and there was court costs, and that's what was that Amy has to pay. And I asked, well, can she go back to work? Because she got a month's suspension as well. Can she go back to work? Because she's refusing to take down anything. But she said it was only the 4 tweets that where she mentioned being a nurse that had to be taken down. And so all the other stuff that she says, because Amy is also part of she started a group, and it's the Canadian Women's Sex-Based Rights Group. So she's allowed to do all that stuff as long as she doesn't mention that she's a nurse anyway. That's the only place that they can discipline her, is if she's mentioning it as a nurse, because it was her own professional body that disciplined her, and there was the court costs that they charged her with.
I feel like usually, though, these colleges have a kind of section where it says if you bring the college into disrepute, and even if you're not identifying as a professional, so they might have been able to do her anyway, even if it wasn't on these terms.
And then one of the key things that Lisa talked about there is because I asked what the difference in freedom of speech here in Canada and the United States, and I think Wilbur brought it up as well. So the United States is like the gold standard for freedom of speech. It is their First Amendment right, the freedom of speech, and in Canada it has freedom of speech, but it's got guardrails and limitations and all that kind of stuff. So, but she said that the United States has exported all their culture wars, and you can think of the variety of culture wars that have been exported to the rest of the world. But the rest of the world doesn't have that absolutism on freedom of speech. So they can go after, like if you're speaking out, you've seen it in the UK, you've seen it in Germany, and definitely you see it in Canada here. Because in the United States, they cannot restrict freedom of speech. Even though she said they tried some backdoor stuff, the Biden administration tried some backdoor stuff with the social media platforms.
But I mean, the truth is, and most people know this if they think about it, we are part of an informal empire, the American empire. Yeah. We're one of the provinces, just like Britain is in Europe and to a lesser extent,
but we didn't
Korea
get their
and Japan
protections.
And so on.
We don't get their protections.
Yeah. But we swallow wholesale all their culture, all the Hollywood movies. Yeah. So people, by and large, people don't read the charter and things like that. They don't care, but they do watch Hollywood movies and they do watch news out of the US. And so they'll be familiar with things like First Amendment rights or even just the very idea that you can speak freely. That's broadcast into the provinces from the center of the empire there. And then all of a sudden you learn, actually, they have their own law, these provinces. But what's interesting is that increasingly, under the Trump presidency at least, is starting to upset the American empire, like the actual administrators of the American empire, like J.D. Vance, who's increasingly now saying, you've got to stop censoring people's speech. So you've got to start to harmonize your law with the center of the empire rather than having your own little provincial law.
So this is the bottom line, and this is key point for you, like what Ian just said. This is key for Canadians to recognize. The United States is paramount as far as freedom of speech. It's near absolute free speech protection. Like that's their First Amendment right. And here in Canada, it's strong, but limited by broader consideration of equality, dignity, and social order. So, and then when you got to go listen to this lawyer, because she says that she reads the paragraph out that kind of like talks about Canada, and then she says you can interpret that many ways, but she said what the Canadian government is working on is how to constrict freedom of speech as opposed to how to expand freedom of speech. So we have a government right now that works on like what we just listened to, Chrystia Freeland there. Their continued work in this government is on how to constrict it based on that paragraph that's in the charter, as opposed to how to expand freedom of expression. That's
they crowbarred in. They crowbarred in with this term hate speech, which doesn't actually mean anything. Yeah. It's a subjective term. Anything can be hate if you want it to be. Yeah. So they'll say, oh, you don't like hate speech though, do you? And something along the lines of protect the kids, everybody. But really what that does, if you add a little asterisk to your freedom of speech rights, in reality, you don't have freedom of speech at all. It will be taken away from you.
You have to go watch that because it really explains it very well. Lisa does a really good job explaining it, and we'll have that story up later too, but it is on our Now Media thing here too. Then I also spoke with another lawyer here from that the Justice Center got going, and this guy is from the, oh man, I can't even read it right, but what's that? Charter Advocacy Group. But he was the lawyer for the Canadian vet that was fined $28,000 for walking in the woods. And he says that provinces pulled that number out of their hat, and then like typically the government will probably just drop those charges when they get to court because they like to be able to use these fines to dissuade people. But they did also file for a judicial review, so that's a really good interview to go watch as well. And we also interviewed Jeff Evely. Like here it is, a small outlet like Now Media here that has to compete with the government-funded media. Where I think we do more work in this kind of stuff. We're actually willing to talk to both sides, where most of the outlets really just push a narrative.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, it's interesting, that interview with the lawyer. One of them, probably the most interesting thing, as far as I'm concerned, is how he says the law doesn't even stipulate what it means by the woods. Yeah. It doesn't say what that is. And then he goes on to say that, lots of people would say that Nova Scotia in its entirety is the woods, which is kind of true, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of true of Canada outside of the prairies in the Arctic.
And then this is from your 5 things this morning. Famine now confirmed in Gaza. This is a UN-backed food security body. The Integrated Food Security Phase Classifications has now confirmed the presence of famine in Gaza, warning that more than 500,000 people facing starvation and death because of actions taken by Israel in a retaliatory war against Islamist terrorists in the territory. Israel, however, said there is no famine in Gaza and said the latest report did not take in account of tens of million meals distributed by Israel-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
I mean, it's the evidence is piling up, isn't it? That there's malnutrition or starvation in Gaza, but this is still a very contentious issue because Israel says that organizations, including the UN, are acting in an unprofessional way and that they're being biased and they're not telling the truth. And they actually have a personal kind of stake in this story because they want to be the ones to deliver aid, but Israel stopped them. So, I mean, it's an argument that's ongoing. But one thing that's for certain, that's beyond doubt, is that there's an awful lot of misery in Gaza, isn't there? You can't really deny that right now.
Anita Anand, our foreign minister, had a meeting with her counterpart, Secretary Marco Rubio in Washington. And if you compare those people, And you can go through the cabinet and you can see where that all stacks up. But here's the two different tweets. Here's Nita Anand's tweet. She had a productive meeting with Rubio. They discussed collaboration on shared priorities, including supporting Ukraine, advancing Arctic security, addressing the security crisis in Haiti, and continuing to provide humanitarian aid in Gaza. That meeting was really quick. And then she canceled her press conference and then split. There's talk out there that she got a tongue lashing from Rubio and then left, because here's Rubio's tweet, and said he met with the foreign minister, agreed on the need to support Haiti, which is agreeable, and Hamas's efforts to stand in the way of peace in Gaza, which is different, and to counter China's coercive activity in our hemisphere, which Canada seems to be fueling as opposed to trying to stop. So a little difference there.
Well, a little difference in the tweet as well. There's one country not mentioned by Anita Anand, not doing her or her party any favors when it comes to accusations that they're a bit soft on China. Doesn't even mention China.
That's exactly it. That's the point I was trying to make. They miss China, and then Carney absolutely silent on that. And I'm sure in that press conference, the BC Ferry question has come up, and canola. Right? We'll see. We'll come back to that, I imagine. And then this is I don't know. Like, I don't even bother. But this is I'm like, we won't even play this clip here, but I guess they raided John Bolton's, the former, in Trump's first administration, former national security advisor to Trump. They raided his home for documents this morning.
Weaponization of the justice system, basically. He to whom evil is done will do evil in return. And that seems to be what's happening.
So in a breaking news story, that BC ostrich farm here lost its appeal there to save its animals from being culled. So I guess it remains to be seen, because there was also, I think, Dr. Oz offered to take those birds to the U.S. So we'll see where that goes now.
Kennedy also had something to say about it, didn't he?
Kennedy and Oz worked together, really. And this story I never really looked in, but I just thought it was interesting. ESPN picks Vancouver as the most miserable sports city in Canada. I never really looked in. And this guy is absolutely like, and this is the question for you now. Well, if you look at this tweet here from Andrew Coyne, who is a CBC political commentator and also I think writes for the Globe and Mail. While Trump and his cronies exploit their positions for personal gain, take bribes from foreign powers, engage in corruption on a scale described as comparable only to post-colonial Africa. But, journalists, I asked ChatGPT because I thought, well, usually journalists say alleged and all this stuff. Like, he makes some really strong claims there. And I don't think that they fit journalistic standards. And
definitely not, but nor do we in the way we talk sometimes, but it's like, it's an opinion. This is an opinion show, isn't it? And that's an opinion account.
Well,
so I guess in that sense, it's all right. But I mean, he is making pretty big accusations there.
Well,
I think he's right to say Trump has exploited his position for personal gain. That's just beyond doubt, as far as I'm concerned. With his little crypto scam, what else is that? But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I suppose it's incumbent upon him to add a bit more evidence, considering.
Yeah, I mean, he says
the nature of those claims.
Journalists are given leeway in expressing opinions, which we rely on. But however, in the tweet there, it appears to state allegations as fact rather than framed opinion. So that's the difference. And then I'll let you talk on this one here in 5 things. A Canadian press news agency writes another article in favor of the controversial Liberal law. And not satisfied with recent one-sided article about the Online News Act, the CP has now published another tenuous story about the highly controversial legislation. And this time they got the president of the Canadian Association of Broadcasters to support this Stephen Guilbeault monstrosity. I'll let you just go.
I just found this astonishing, and as you know, because you were in the email, I've emailed the managing editor of the Canadian Press, and I wasn't going to do that because it's a waste of time usually, but I just thought this is so egregious and it's so bad that I just had to, like, even if it's a waste of time, which it almost certainly is, I just had to draw his attention to this story, because it's a story about, well, it's about the Online Streaming Act and also the Online News Act, but it's a story very much concerned with the Online News Act that doesn't explain anything about the Online News Act. It literally doesn't even include mention of the fact that news organizations in Canada can't post articles on Facebook or Instagram, which is I mean, never mind the fact that that's caused huge amounts of damage to the revenue streams of media outlets in Canada. Obviously, that's not mentioned. But to not even mention why the Americans, because it tries to hinge it a lot on the State Department, which released a report saying that the Online News Act is a censorship bill or something like that, that it basically performs the role of censor. It doesn't even mention why the Americans are upset, which is because of news being banned on Facebook. I mean, it's a very, very limited article. And I have to say, if this came under my nose here, one of our reporters had written something like this, I would just say, look, obviously this is on a certain angle, but you have to at least include 1 or 2 sentences where you just mention the stuff going on and mention that some people aren't happy about it. But this is more like a blog, you know. It's like a blog that you would get from Coiney there, Mr. Coin. It's like an opinion blog, you know. It's just so disappointing because obviously Canada doesn't have any other news agencies. It's only the Canadian press. So this article is going to go everywhere. Every publication in Canada is going to put this out.
And they just run it out there just like it's the gospel. And again, remember Stephen Guilbeault reacting to, I think it was Aaron Gunn, saying that, you know, questioning Bill C-18 is like, it's an immoral act.
Well, it includes in there something I didn't mention in that email, because what's the point? It includes in this story saying that Stephen Guilbeault has not publicly defended the law or something like that. He hasn't stood up for the law. So not only is it bad and biased, but it's also
wrong,
incompetent. Doesn't he? Yeah, it's factually inaccurate. It doesn't even the author is not even aware, apparently,
and
that Stephen
watching,
Guilbeault said something quite extraordinary in Parliament about this very law not so long ago.
And everybody watching here, it is your taxpayer dollars that are funding government-funded media, and it's not just CBC; it's CTV. CTV takes money. CTV takes money. Globe and Mail takes money. They all take money. They're all like 35% of their wages are covered by the Liberals, by the Liberal government, 35%. And then plus there's other schemes that are out there in the advertising that comes from the Liberal government and all that stuff. You know, like, I mean, almost half their salaries are covered by the Liberal government. I say Liberal government because the Conservative government said they would stop it. So where's their bias? Look at these stories. Like this is an absolute atrocity of a story. And we've both
and it's also, by the way, just if you're wondering, like some unfair observer might say, what's it got to do with you, you loser? Like, why are you talking about it? Both of these stories that we're talking about are based in large part on work that we did. Specifically asking both Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney what they think about this bill. Even though in both of these stories, it's not mentioned that it was us that asked, obviously. Why would they mention us? But, you know, this is kind of like, we do have a horse in this race in that we've covered this story better than basically everybody in Canada, and with no credit, least of all from the Canadian press.
Yeah, we've, as a small regional outlet, we've done more work on this story than probably all the other outlets combined. And they don't refer to us. We've written so many stories. And even CTV just reprints this crap, and they don't say anything because they in their own press release said they laid off 4,800 employees and they cited Bill C-18 for the layoff. And they don't mention that.
Lots of organizations have done it, but all the big boys and all the leaders of the groups, the journalism groups, all the rest of it, they all seem to love C-18. But I mean, you're really failing in your job as a journalist if that's the only people you speak to on a story. There's a whole array of people that have an opinion on this.
And I talked to a local journalist here in town, and I said, well, you know, because he's talked about how, you know, we could do stories together. And I said, why don't you do one on Bill C-18? He's like, well, we don't want to upset them because then they'll take away the money we're getting. We want Facebook back, but we don't want to upset the ability to get government money.
Well, what were we talking about earlier when how institutions become downgraded and society becomes downgraded, and then suddenly you have to do something that you don't agree with just to survive? Like,
Pierre Poilievre highlighted this, and we've highlighted it before. I don't know if you got it from us or whatever, but the scheme seems to be weaken the industry to bring it to its knees, and then selectively offer crumbs to some. And then you have them eating out of your hand. Well, they have no choice but to eat out of your hand.
Well, there's a phrase that's going around on the internet. I think I mentioned it a while ago, but it seems to apply here, which is the purpose of a system is what it does. Not what people say it's going to do, what it's meant to do, but what it actually does. What does this system do? It kills independent media in Canada, and it puts the surviving media
Close
on
to
a
100
leash.
outlets
That's
have
the
failed
truth.
since
That's what it's doing.
Those are the stats. Those are the facts. And the other thing is, if we look at right now, since Poilievre won the Battle Crowfoot riding, this Bonnie Critchley, who got, like, what, 10% of the vote?
Something like that, yeah.
She's got more airplay on CBC and CTV. Like, she's still getting airplay, talking about how the election was rigged and all saying she's got irregularities. Like, it wasn't even close. Wasn't even close. And here they are trotting her out, showing how, you know, it's basically how to paint Pierre Poilievre in the worst possible image as possible. Like, because they don't talk about, again, to be fair, what Mark Carney did in Nepean, how he didn't even ask the guy to leave. He just told him he was done. Like, basically just took a sign down.
But they also forget that this is the first by-election in the government of Mark Carney. The incumbent party also had a candidate in that election, and they got something like 4%. That's also a story. Yeah. Incumbent party's candidate gets 4% in its first test, its first democratic test since winning power. That's also a headline. Of course, don't expect CBC, CTV, or anybody else to write that headline, because they're not interested in that, not even a wee bit.
But if you look at the energy that CBC and CTV are putting into Bonnie Critchley, like they did that right from the beginning. Like they ran so many stories and they're still running stories on it. It's just, it's like the best thing you can do is shut them out. Like, we can't shut them out because it's part of what we talk about. But I mean, like, you give them power by watching them. And it's just ridiculous what they do. Absolutely.
I mean, to be fair, most Canadians have already done what you advised. It's just a minority that bothers, isn't it?
They try to paint this picture and try to pretend. I mean, it's just like this CP story on the Online News Act is just absolutely ridiculous. If you go on Kelowna now, you can find, how many stories have we done? 30 stories on it?
God knows, yeah.
And
Dozens.
you have an interview coming up with one of the experts that we would actually call an expert in Canadian media, Michael Geist. That's coming up next week.
But he's also somebody that's an independent operator. He's a tenured professor at University of Ottawa. He's not in anybody's pay. He's not, well, except University of Ottawa. But he's not like, he's not partisan. So he can actually give his opinion. Unlike, for example, Stephen Guilbeault's ministry, which says, obviously that's partisan. And then all these other groups that are feeding at the trough of the federal government's largesse in the media world, obviously they're partisan. We're trying to interview people that aren't partisan, that might actually be able to provide some real context about this.
Canadian press do themselves a disservice by allowing this stuff to be put out.
It's definitely not. I mean, it's not the first time, won't be the last time. Somebody's asked here, what agencies ask questions, go out to ask questions. I mean, it says what agencies that send reporters out to ask questions. I mean, there's only one agency really in Canada, and that's Canadian Press. And they do sometimes ask questions. I mean, now and then you get Reuters. That's like a British agency, really. That's like an international one. AP. That's it, really, isn't it?
AP.
Associated Press now and then, but they're very American-centric, aren't they?
Anyway, that's our week. I do have a couple of interviews coming up today, though. We've done a lot of really good interviews this week. We interviewed the lawyer for Amy Ham, which is a national case. We've interviewed the lawyer for Jeff Evely. We've interviewed Wilbur Turner there for the Sean Foyt thing. We've also interviewed John Carpay on that. And we're trying to get Sean Foyt as well. I do have Gavin Dew later today. We're going to talk about the amount of people fleeing British Columbia for Alberta. And then also at 3 o'clock, I have Dennis Storchuk coming in, and we're going to talk about Ukraine right now. And then we're going to see if we can get somebody on, actually, that's in Kiev right now as well. So that should be interesting as well. So, again,
nice bit of world news from us there.
Now Media doing the work with how much of CBC's budget, if we had to compare it? None of it, right?
I'd say minus 50% of their budget, probably.
$1.51 billion now, isn't it? Something like that. They got an extra 150 million. So they had 1.4.
Definitely good times at the CBC, at the SEAB.
There you go. So if that's
But they're
what you
still
want,
whining, obviously. They'll always whine
more.
about it, won't they?
They need more. Anyway, we'll check in and see what Mark Carney has conceded, and see what he got for what kind of scrap, and then we'll see if we can find out what if there was a tongue lashing for Anita Anand. That's it for the week, though. We might come back and do a tech thing, though. I don't know. We'll see. See how the day goes. With that said, enjoy your weekend. It's a beautiful sunny day here in the Okanagan, and it looks like a sunny day. It looks like the sun's shining on you there in the nation's capital.
Oh,
as well.
yeah.
There you go.
Have a jolly good Shabbat, everyone.
And then the
Shabbat
following
shalom.
weekend is Labor Day. It might be, that might be the way that this is going, it might be the Freedom Day pretty soon, because it used to be in June that you used to get freedom from taxation. Now I think it's past that. We might end up in Labor Day. Anyway. All right. Cheers. And thank you for watching Now Media.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding.